RoboArchitect also contains support for connecting to databases. So you can connect to existing databases, for example, an Oracle database, SQL Server, Postgres, MySQL, Microsoft Access, without needing any client drivers installed on your machine. You can also build file-based databases using the built-in SQLite engine in the event that you don't have access to a database and just want to do some basic ETL. What we have here up on the screen is the same test CSV sample data that we used in some of our other demos. And what we're going to do is we're going to take this file, we're going to load it into a SQLite database. We're going to run a custom query on it, and then we are going to extract the results to a text file. Close that file. We have our script here set up. So just for simplifying some of these commands, I've created some batch variables. So the name of the database that we're going to create, the file that we're going to be loading into the database, the table name within the database that we'll be referencing, and then what our output file name will be. We're going to run 3 steps within this process. First, we're going to create a database in our working folder here. We're going to do that using RoboArchitect SQL command and specifying our connection is SQLite. The operation is going to be create database, and then the database name is going to be testDB. After we create that, we're going to load our sample data file into the database and create a table called housing. And we have some parameters here, so I'll just walk you through what each of these are. So we're again using that SQL command. We're specifying our connection as SQLite. If we were connecting to a different database technology, we could put the full JDBC URL in this parameter. Our operation is going to be import table. We're importing data to a table within our database. We specify our database name, which is what we just created, which will be that testDB. Our mode, we have 2 options. We can either overwrite the data, so it'll essentially drop the table and create a new one. We can also append to the table if we just want to incrementally add some additional records. Our source file will be the file that we're going to be loading to the table, that sample data.csv, and our table is going to be housing. Once we have the data in the table, we're going to run a SQL query to specify what data we want to extract out, and we're going to save that to a file. So again, we're using that RoboArchitect SQL command, specifying our connection as SQLite. This time the operation is going to be query database. So we have different options when we do query. We can run any type of SQL command, whether it's a select, insert, update, etc. All that is supported. We are specifying our database name as our testDB. Our query, we're going to select just the bed, bath, list price, and square feet from the table, ignoring the rest of the columns. From our housing table, and our conditions are going to be where the number of beds is greater than 3, and then we're going to do some ordering on our records. We're going to specify as our output the output.txt file. There are also some optional commands, like whether or not we want headers in the file as well. I'll show you what each of those are when we get to the RoboArchitect UI interface. So that's the script, just a few lines here. I'm going to run it, and we'll see that our testDB gets created. That's our SQLite database, so it's going to stay there. And you can open that database using any SQLite database IDE. and you can connect to it. You can see the data that's in there live. You can create additional database components like views and so forth in there. However you want to use it, that database is there and yours. We have our logs, which will show the different steps that we ran. So we created the database, we dropped the table if it already existed, which it didn't because we just created a brand new database. And then we have the code that we ran to create the table. Our output file here, again, we didn't specify that we wanted the headers on there, so it's just the data. It's our beds, baths, the list price, and the square feet in ascending order for each of those 4 columns. And that's our output file. So what I'll do now is I'll show you the Robo Architect UI similar to the other commands that we've had. Again, you can access that by going to volanianalytics.github.io/RoboArchitectUI and select the SQL command here. You can enter your connection. So if you're connecting to Microsoft Access, or you're connecting to Oracle Database or SQL Server, you would put the JDBC URL in this field here. Otherwise, you can just type SQLite, and that will create a file-based database on your machine. Our query, we have several options here. We can create database, we can import table, or we can query the database. And each of these will show the valid fields that you have. So creating the database, all it requires is you to enter that database name. Import table, you would specify database name, the file, the table name, the delimiter in the source file. And for the mode, as I mentioned before, you can either append the data or overwrite the data. And then if we go to query database, you can enter the database name, the query that you'd like. Again, it can be a select statement. You can do updates. You can create views. You can any SQL DDL is supported in this field here. And you can also specify the query in a text file if you'd rather have it in a file than specify it in your script. This return field is essentially if you're writing a select statement and data is going to be returned, you would specify this as yes. If not, if you're just doing like an update statement or something where you're not getting data back from the result of that query, you can specify no. The default value is yes, so that's why you didn't see us specify that flag in the scripts we wrote. Destination file will be the output file that we're writing to. The header defaults to no, but you can optionally specify a header in the output file. So it'll show you each of the column names in that header. And with all our Robo Architect scripts, you can choose a custom log file if you'd like and enter a custom name for it. You can choose the logging level, whether it's info, debug, or trace. And lastly, you can specify the output, whether you want a Windows batch script, a Linux shell script, or a Mac script as well.